Hello, everyone. My name is Monica Gleberman, and you're listening to Silence on Set podcast. I'm going to start simple. Talk to me about Geena and kind of how she found herself stuck in, I thought it was such a great juxtaposition of a teeny tiny trailer in a vast, wide open land.
That's starting simple. Girl, your brain is not simple. We both know it in the best way possible. I love that question. Okay, so that juxtaposition is something that is like a seminal part of the film, right? Because, I feel like the desert is a very therapeutic place for those of us that have the tools and the psychological resources to metabolize what comes up in the desert and what we're confronted with. But if you don't have those tools, I think you can go in the opposite direction. And I think, ironically, she can be in this expansive space like the desert, but it becomes suffocating because she's so isolated. And it does reflect the fact that you can be in, it doesn't matter how big the space you're in is when you are disconnected from humanity. We need that as humans, right? And we need that from more than one person. So she's in this tiny trailer. She's completely isolated with her husband. And as I said, the desert for me has been therapeutic because you go out there and it feels like it dials the volume down on other things. And it dials the volume up on your own thoughts, which can be confronting. But then ultimately, when you're in the desert, you're able to confront these thoughts in a way that puts them into perspective. Because the desert's huge. And that's what I find. I look out into the desert and I feel like, oh, I'm a bug on the center of the universe. And like I'm a bug on planet Earth in this vast universe. And my problems don't lose gravity. I don't dismiss them in any way where I suppress them, but they just take their proper place in my head. But if you don't have the ability to metabolize that in that way, and you're like a frog in boiling water. She becomes a frog in boiling water and she can't tell the boiling water temperature until this couple arrives, right? So it's massively confronting for her in a way that's deeply painful, and she doesn't know how to do that. She doesn't know how to put it into action. She doesn't know how to do anything. And it comes from her upbringing and her lack of resources that she unfortunately doesn't have psychologically and otherwise.
Yeah. And I mean, like you said, she's literally trapped. And she's in a marriage that, there's all these sorts of horrible things, verbal abuse, physical abuse, just things that she's dealing with. And when these two people kind of show up in this desolate area, it almost opens up like a window for her where she goes, ooh, maybe this isn't normal, how I'm living.
Yeah.
This is weird. So, with them showing up and they're, two people from New York, they have a little more they have their own, obviously, issues with their relationship. But what is the catalyst for your character with them showing up that really clicks with her and goes, I shouldn't stay here. Like, this is not good where I am.
Well, it's really interesting because, first of all, there is proof, and this has been proven in studies, scientific studies, that when we visualize a future for ourselves, right? When you close your eyes and visualize a future and a version of yourself that's happy in an environment under circumstances that feel like they are conducive to what you ultimately want, you're more likely to achieve those things. And visualization is super powerful. So that becomes actualized for her. She literally is feeling, as you said, like trapped. The complicated thing that I think is important in the film is we wanted to really show some love that had once been present between her and Clyde, because it's so easy to look at women who are in these situations and dismiss them as like, why aren't you getting out of this situation? It's like, well, maybe think about where they're coming from. Maybe she is as intelligent as you'd want her to be, but this is someone who loved her fiercely once, and she's actually just, it's not a lack of intelligence. It's the amount of compassion she has. He comes from a situation where his mom abandoned him, right? So he is doing everything he can for her to not abandon him. So hopefully you develop enough sympathy for him that allows us to understand that Geena is intelligent, and it's not a reductive situation that involves this woman who's like suffering because of her abuser. She's suffering because of herself. It's her own self-limiting beliefs that she can't get out of this situation, but she allows it to happen. And he does ultimately prove that he loves her, and he is responsible for a lot, but she's responsible for some. The good news is, like, she can take control of the wheel. The bad news is it's scary, right? This couple shows her how to take control of the wheel and literally forces the concept of what her life can be in her face in a way that she can't not actualize for herself. but she has to transcend a lot and go through very challenging things, like confronting the fact that Clyde, who's the only person who's ever really loved her, is not the person that she's meant to be with. And I think the reason that's hard to confront is because sometimes we like to think that means the love wasn't there or the love wasn't true, but it was. It's just, it's not serving her any longer. And it takes a lot to go through that and confront that.
Well, to talk about that, you guys do such a great job, and Jai does such a great job with this. You guys don't cross a line where it seems unreal. What's so nice about it is every time she gets upset or every time she feels I'm not loved, which is very typical, I think, in an abusive relationship, he shows her, right, things that he does love her. And there is love here. And I do want to stay with you. And he builds her something and he wants to bring her flowers and do these things. And that's what happens is like you get into that cycle where you're like, all right, well, he does love me. He does care about me. So I'm going to, stay. I'm going to make this work.
Yeah.
And it's such an interesting thing to see you guys repeat it. But what I really, really enjoyed was the scene where you're dealing with all of that on a regular basis. And then when your character finally goes, I don't know, maybe I should leave. I'm not sure. She's talking to the new people that are there and then make the decision to go to the police. I feel like that was the most realistic scene of the panic where she goes, but I thought you wanted me to go in. You don't want me to go in? I don't know what to do. And like, she just completely panicked and ran back, which happens so often. So if you could talk about that a little bit, because it's such a cycle and you guys did such a good job of showing that cycle on a regular basis throughout the film.
Yeah, I mean, really, the credit goes to the writer-director, Stuart Gatt, because he was the one who wrote the material that contained those scenes where that was present in the film. I think for us, our mutual or our collective goal was the same, which is like, it's so human to have that moment. And it feels like the cinematic thing is you gather your strength, you go and you transcend your fears and you conquer it and you're the strong woman. And it's like, yes, that's great. We love strong women, but women can be strong and they can also have moments of self-doubt and they can also be messy and they can also contradict themselves and be strong. Not even in spite of all that, but because of that, right? I think the strength correlates with the amount of fear you have and hesitation, and it might take you longer to get there. It might not be linear in the way that we like to portray in films, but things have been very neat in films in the past when it comes to women specifically and in general. And I don't like that black and white thing. And that's exactly what Stuart Gatt, the writer director, had in mind. Which is that he wanted to show very human characters, each going through their own respective journeys that are all so specific, but ironically the specificities make them more easy to relate to. And so that to me felt like yet another moment that reflected her humanity. And if I had to choose, like the one thing that I look for in every single character that I will play for the rest of my life, that I will hopefully knock on wood be able to find, is just an insistence on finding the humanity. And in every single moment where there are two options, you can take the easy, the cinematic and the obvious option, or the option that exposes human nature. The latter is always more interesting to me, always more productive in terms of anything storytelling can do in the world, and just overall better storytelling.
The movie ends, there's this horrific kind of, I don't know if you want to call it an accident or self-induced, but there's this horrific tragedy that happens in her life. And then another woman, which I thought was great to have a woman of all people show up.
I love that. I know.
Comes in and she has, cash and kind of almost like a way out for her. And there's this long scene and it's silent and there's not much dialogue. And I just enjoyed watching that ending, and it left me with 155,000 questions. I was like, what is she going to do? Where's she going to go? How is she feeling? Should we feel happy for her? Should we feel sad for her for what happened? That, the other two people are gone. Now she's alone. Is she alone? So it left so many things. So how do you feel about the ending when you read it? And what are you most proud of for people to see? Because I love this film so much.
Thank you so much. That means a lot, because I love the ending specifically because we did something that it feels like people are too afraid to do these days, which is the ending is meant to have a million question marks. It's meant to have a million question marks, be up for interpretation, and you interpret it and you can decide where she goes. And hopefully, people will look at it, and based on the film that has been shown up until this point, you can understand that you can trust the fact that it's not going to be a linear trajectory, but she has transcended something that she was unable to transcend at the start of the film. And what does it mean when she's looking at that object, that place that he's built for her with this money? What does any of it mean is really a question that none of us will ever answer, because I have my answer. But that is what I love in film and art, and that's what I think we need to do a little bit. I would like to see more of is paint the painting for people, but leave a little bit with blank parts of the painting for people to add their own strokes into the painting, and assume the audience is intelligent and use our own psyches to project onto it in a way that allows the story to resonate with us all the more. We don't need to feed the audience as much as we've been feeding them, I think. And I like the ambiguity around the ending, because the ending might be ambiguous, but we know so much about these characters by now that it was more important that the clarity of these characters and every nuance was fleshed out. And yeah, it wasn't tied up in a neat box, in a neat bow, because that's not life, right? And that's what we were doing. We were trying to relay that films can be about paradoxical humans living lives that aren't as easily categorized as we would like them to be.
Well, I have to tell you, I just adore you. It was
Ah,
so
thank you.
good. And like I said,
Thank
I had
you
a
so
million
much.
questions. I was like, you guys have to go rent it. I was telling friends to go watch it so that we could discuss it. And because it was so interesting to hear what everyone
Ah,
thinks about it. And you were so good in it. And like I said,
mm,
you did that fine line, which is so hard to do, where
mm.
it's like not too much and not too little. It's
It's
like
hard,
so
yeah, it was scary because,
relatable.
like, I felt so unlike her. I was like, "Oh my god." I still like, you don't know, it's hard to play a character so unlike yourself with an accent and not know where the line is. But thank you. It means a lot, especially coming from a woman, because this film to me is ultimately about, like, I want more films about messy women that are still strong in spite of it and because of that, you know?
Yeah. Thank you for listening to Silence on Set podcast. My name is Monica Gleberman. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more interviews to come.